Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
We've got 2 new Dogman stories for you today. Coming up later, are Dogman and Sasquatch the same thing? Read by Retribution. But let's start things off right now with Wisconsin werewolf sighting and Synchronicity, as told to Peter Bernard, read by your old pal Bigfoot. Back in the late 1990s, when I was still a kid, my family were driving through Michigan and Wisconsin for my father's business. He originally was going to make the trip himself, as he had all through my and my brother's childhoods, but we all wanted to go with him this time. We talked him into camping out along the way instead of using hotels, so it would actually be cheaper than if he went alone. Plus, Mom offered to handle cooking, and my brother and I offered to not be too large of a nuisance, so off we went. Of course, my brother, who we can call Tom, and I were largely interested in going on the trip due to our interest in the Beast of Bray Road, which we had read about in 14 times, I guess. We were aware of the Michigan Dogman as well, so we were very hyped up about the possibility of sighting a werewolf. At the time, we really had no concept that doing something like camping out in a dogman-infested area might be dangerous. We didn't think animals would bother humans. We thought life was like watching TV. But when we did run into a dogman, he taught us a very different way of looking at things. So anyway, the entire trip, nothing at all interesting happened. When we reached our furthest point and were about to begin to drive back, Tom and I were kind of down about the whole thing, and our parents were sick of camping out. They said we would sleep at a hotel on the way back, which had far fewer stops and was going to be a shorter trip anyway. But being kids, we just got involved in talking about other things, and we had soon almost forgotten about the Dogman entirely. Then, the strangest thing happened. My father got off the highway and onto a local road. I think it was Plank Road. This is either in or near Elkhorn, Wisconsin. My mother was confused and concerned, wanting to know why we were on this country road, driving through some kind of farm. It was wheat or corn or something like that growing there on both sides. It felt like the children of the corn were going to jump out at us and say boo. Even though it was the middle of the day and quite sunny, I was getting as freaked out as my mother was. Finally, we reached the end of the block and made a turn. I looked up at the street sign and was amazed to read that we were entering Bray Road. I gasped. My mother asked what was wrong. I told her we were on Bray Road. She asked, "So what?" I informed her in a frantic fashion that this was the home of the Beast of Bray Road. Of course, she asked, "What's a Beast of Bray Road?" And as I was about to answer, telling her it was a werewolf, I heard the word werewolf come out of my brother Tom's mouth. Only he wasn't just saying it. He was screaming it, passionately. I looked and saw that he was pointing at something outside the window. By the time I had turned in his direction, he had moved from pointing out his side window to pointing out the back window. I looked out there just in time to see something larger than a man walk off the road and disappear into the wheat. It was a large, hairy animal that walked like a man, but had a tail like a dog or maybe a cat. It must have crossed behind the car from the driver's side over past the passenger side and disappeared. Neither of our parents saw it. Both Tom and I, though, we both saw it. I couldn't believe it appeared just as I was about to say the word werewolf. The episode was pretty shocking, but it only annoyed my mother, who then went on to lecture all of us about how hard her life was, having to be on this road trip with her family. She seemed to have forgotten that the rest of us were on that same road trip with her, and she was describing our fun time as torture. It kind of put us all in a bad mood. Dad explained that he had taken the detour down to Bray Road as a special treat for me and Tom, since we hadn't gotten to see Dogman along the way. He wanted us to at least get to see the location of one of the famous sightings. The more he explained this to Mom, the more confused and annoyed she got that he would encourage our belief in monsters and what she described as fantasy. Soon, she had ruined the evening with all her rules about what we were allowed to think or feel. We got a hotel room, and Mom ordered lights out almost as soon as we had gotten there. None of us three guys could sleep, though, so we all got dressed again and decided to go for a stroll outside the hotel in the night. We were only about a mile from Bray Road, I think, or at least close enough that we could imagine we were in Dogman territory as we enjoyed the starry night. It was a real moment of bonding for me, Tom, and Dad as we comforted each other and restored each other's self-esteem. Soon, we were daring each other to cross the highway in front of the hotel and walk into the woods across the way. Dad kept telling us Dogman lived over there. I wondered if he would really have let us cross the road in the middle of the night looking for werewolves. If Mom caught us, she would have killed all three of us. So anyway, Dad was daring us, and we were daring him right back, when suddenly we heard a sound from across the highway, like the sound of branches breaking under a heavy weight. Looking across, I swear to you, we basically saw the exact same thing we had seen before. The hairy, tall man with the tail that had crossed Bray Road behind us. This seemed to be the same kind of creature. For all I know, it was the exact same one we had seen earlier. I screamed like an idiot. I was a kid, but that was a dumb thing even for a kid to do. Tom had his hand over my mouth trying to shut me up, but that animal man was now looking right in my eyes. It was not at all what I'd expected a dogman to look like. This thing was not some magnificent marvel of nature. It was not a terrifying but noble carnivore like a bear. It was more like something designed to do evil, like something that had crawled out of hell itself and existed only to leave things worse than it had found them. I only looked at that creature for a second before squirming and fighting to escape Tom and run back to the hotel at my top kid speed. I did note that the creature's breath was turning to smoke in front of its mouth, but this was an almost 70-degree night. So I ran to the hotel, and after I was inside, only then did I look behind me. I saw my brother running toward me, followed by my father. I looked around for the werewolf, and I saw him first by the whiffs of white smoke he was emitting as he panted on the edge of the hotel's property line. He was staring at us, but no longer following. It was as though the beast knew about trespassing law. I watched the wolf-headed hairy man-thing, and I saw that its eyes seemed kind of orange or yellow, but I couldn't be certain that wasn't caused by the reflection of the streetlights. I hadn't noticed it the first time I saw the creature, so maybe it was just due to where he was standing. At any rate, when Tom and Dad got back inside the hotel, we all watched through the glass doors as the animal or man or whatever it was walked off back across the highway and into the forest out of our sight. We still couldn't sleep, so we sat up talking in the hotel lobby until we were formally asked to please return to our rooms or to our car, since we were annoying people. Out in the night lurked the Dogman, but up in our room lurked our angry mom. So we did what anyone would do. We went out and slept in the car. Or, I should say, Dad slept, while Tom and I stayed up till dawn looking around for werewolves in the night. Mom yelled at us in the morning, but she would have yelled at us no matter what we did. After all, her life was so hard having to be on a road trip with her family. Poor Dad had to cope with it while Tom and I crashed out and slept the whole rest of the way home. And that's the story of the one, or really 2 times, that my family and I saw the Wisconsin werewolf.
OMG, where are you gonna be Thanksgiving weekend? Stuck with your family? Talking about politics? Or will you be having fun at the Northeast Comic-Con in beautiful Massachusetts, USA? Meet Billy West from Futurama. Meet Akira Takarada from Godzilla. Meet legends of the movies and the comic booklets and the TV. Plus, a comedian standing up show starring real comedians, yo. All this, plus an excuse to get away before Uncle Ned starts blaming your generation for everything over the pumpkin pie. That's the Northeast Comic-Con Thanksgiving weekend, presented by the real original Gary Summers from the Antiques Roadshow, yo. OMG, hooray!
Are Dogman and Sasquatch the same thing? As told to Peter Bernard. Read by Retribution. Okay, I live in Pennsylvania and I am attending a college here as well. My older brother, who is currently in California, always told me he saw Bigfoot when he would go hiking in our area. I don't want to get specific about where we live, but it's in the area of the Chestnut Ridge, which is famous for UFO sightings. When my brother lived here, I was not very athletic. He would go hiking in the woods and I would play a video game about hiking in the woods. Plus, he didn't make it seem any more attractive with his stories about Bigfoot running after him in the woods or whatever it was. Anyway, I got involved with this girl who wanted me to lose weight, so the next thing you knew, I was jogging and hiking in the woods and so on and so forth. I had forgotten about my brother telling me that Bigfoot were in those woods. Love can make you forget a lot of things. At any rate, you want me to get to the part with the monster in it. I was really not hiking or jogging that time, but out for a stroll in the woods, and I smelled something really terrible. I don't even want to describe it, but imagine the worst smells possible, then imagine them mixed with each other. I tensed up. This might be a Sasquatch. They were legendary for emitting a terrible odor. I stopped walking and tried to sense what direction that bad smell was coming from. I wanted to run in the opposite direction of that smell, but it seemed to be all around me, so I just didn't know which way to turn. One wrong move might send me running straight into the arms of a Sasquatch. I heard movement in the woods to my right, so I took off to my left. I was pretty sure I was taking a shortcut through the woods to a different path, but I wasn't certain I was going in the right direction. I don't know if you've ever run through a forest, not along a path, but through a bunch of trees and bushes. It's not fun. You bang yourself on branches, you snare yourself on twigs, you slip on mud, you trip over foliage. You don't need a dogman to mess you up if you can't see very well where you're going in a dense forest. I heard the animal call, and the call came from behind me. I literally, physically found myself unable to move as I listened. The cry started out low, and I visualized Bobo from that TV show making a Bigfoot call behind me. But the thing is, the pitch of the cry moved up and up until I realized I was not listening to a Bigfoot at all. I was listening to the cry of some sort of very large canine. Well, I resumed running, and I don't know why I thought that was a shortcut, because it was anything but. I found myself lost in the woods, not really certain if I was still heading in the same direction I had been running in, and not very certain of what direction that had been in the first place. I had the sensation of running downhill, so I just went with it. I felt I could move faster downhill than uphill, so it gave me a sense of security. The thing is, if that large dog thing that howled was heading in my direction, he would be heading downhill as well. So it wasn't really any advantage, but it made me feel better to be covering more ground in less time. Again, from behind me came a howl from a huge-sounding dog-like monster. It was much closer this time. I needed to move faster. I needed to run, but I found myself frozen in place, my heart beating hard in my chest. I felt like I was going to die of fear on the spot. In a second, I heard a sound from a different direction. It was the sound of a truck driving down a highway. I ran in that direction, knowing now that I was running in the direction of the highway. At least there, I might have a chance of being rescued before this dog thing caught up to me. I still hadn't seen it, but I had heard enough to know that I was in a very bad situation. I ran until well past the point where I thought I was going to collapse. I remember being amazed at the energy I had stored up inside me, and I wondered when it would give out. Don't think, just run, I told myself over and over. Then I would hear the dog monster, and I would panic, and I would worry. And then I would tell myself, don't think, just run. And so I ran, and ran, and ran, and then there was the highway laid out in front of me. I made a break for it. There were lights on the highway. Maybe there would be cars too. Maybe someone who could rescue me. No sooner had I hit the tar pavement of that road than I saw car headlights in front of me. I waved my arms desperately, trying to flag down the driver. Then I heard a brief siren whoop and realized that was a state trooper's vehicle in front of me. He pulled off and I nearly collapsed onto the side of his car, panting for air. He was asking me what was going on, and I was trying to catch my breath so I could tell him when we both heard it. A sound from the woods. Not a kind of sound you'd really want to hear. More of a sort of a growling. We looked, and there, directly under a highway lamp post, stood the tallest man I ever saw. Or it would have been, if it had been a man. It was too hairy to be human, though. It was hairy all over its body, like a long-haired dog or an orangutan. But it stood tall and upright, like a human being. Its head was much more like a wolf or a jackal than a man or an ape's head, but this thing was not really dog or wolf or canine or human or simian. This was some kind of thing that was sort of just its own new thing. This was a dogman. The trooper told me to get in his vehicle, and I was in before he could finish the sentence. The creature had disappeared before we could get inside, and I didn't see what direction it had headed off into. I wanted us to get out of there, but the trooper wanted to review his dashcam footage to see if he had caught the monster on video. Sadly, all he got was me dragging my sorry butt toward him, begging for rescue. So, we had no evidence that anything out of the ordinary took place. For this reason, the trooper told me he was going to have to fudge his report a bit, and asked me to cut him some slack and not insist on reporting the dogman. I really didn't care at all. I was just happy to be safe. So, anyway, my advice to people living in rural Pennsylvania who want to get some exercise is to join a gym. Join a health club. Run around your own backyard. But whatever you do, don't, and I repeat, do not go running in the woods near the Chestnut Ridge alone. That is, unless you're looking to get taught a lesson by the dogman.
Do you have a scary story you want us to read on the show? Just call our voicemail hotline, 804-LIST-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. And now for something completely scary. Come back for more scary stories.